It's not my proudest moment of my life,
No, I
and look,
understand
I've done wrong, and I hold my hands up to it. And going down this route, obviously IVA route to pay the money back, means that I'm not running, and I'm
Yeah,
going
of
to pay
course.
that money back. But
And of course, when they went through everything and saw it with the fines and the interest and everything else, let's just go ding, 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 ding. And I looked at the final total, and I'm like, well, unless I find a magic wand or I win the lottery, there's no way that that's going to get paid. I can't. It's impossible.
These are 10 professional darts players whose careers ended in bankruptcy, prison, long bans, rock-bottom poverty, or an open admission of financial trouble big enough to ban them from running a company. The taxman finished some of them, drink and drugs took others, and a handful destroyed themselves with a single decision that could not be undone. The reasons change from one player to the next, but the ending almost always lands in the same place. Each of them once stood on stage at the Lakeside or the Alexandra Palace with the lights full on them and the cheque in their hand, and within a few short years they were delivering parcels, living on disability, sitting inside a prison cell, banned from the sport for so long they will never play professionally again, or publicly apologising for a six-figure tax bill that was never paid. Counting down from 10 to 1, we are building toward the player who lost the most money in the single most preventable way. Number 10. Rob Cross. Starting the countdown at number 10 is the softest case on this entire list, and for one very specific reason. Unlike everyone you're about to hear about, Rob Cross is alive, still on the PDC tour, still sponsored by Target Darts, and still earning. What lands him on a list like this is his own admission, on camera, that he ended up in serious financial trouble at the very top of the sport. Robert Cross, nicknamed Voltage, born in St Leonards-on-Sea on the 21st of September 1990, was a self-employed electrician until the start of 2017. In January of that year, he won a PDC tour card at Q School, having never played a televised match. 12 months later, on the 1st of January 2018, he beat Phil Taylor 7-2 at Alexandra Palace in the World Championship final, which happened to be the last professional match Taylor would ever play. Cross was 27 years old, a 125 to 1 outsider on debut, and the prize cheque was £400,000. That is the single fastest journey from electrician to world champion in the modern history of the sport. The years that followed have been harder. He has won majors since the 2018 title, including the 2019 European Championship and the 2022 World Match Play, and he reached the semi-finals of the 2024 World Championship before losing to Luke Humphreys. The form has come and gone in cycles though, and the financial reality has not stayed simple. In June of 2025, Cross sat down with Online Darts and publicly addressed an unpaid tax issue connected to one of his companies. Multiple darts outlets reported that he had accepted a UK director disqualification in connection with around £450,000 of unpaid tax, an end date for the ban running into 2030. His own words to Online Darts in that interview are the cleanest summary anyone could write. "It's not my proudest moment of my life. I've done wrong. You make mistakes in life, and I'm willing to sort of correct them. It's going to tarnish me, but I'm going to correct them." The mental side of it caught up with him publicly during the 2025 and 2026 World Championship at Alexandra Palace, when, after a second-round win over Ian White, Cross spoke openly to Talk Sport, Live Darts TV and Tungsten Tales about an ADHD diagnosis, coming off his medication and going into counselling. The phrases he used in those press conferences were direct. "I've been suffering. I felt low in life." A year earlier, in 2024, after Sky Sports left him off a promotional poster for a new deal, he told Darts Now, "Maybe my face doesn't fit." He has since publicly rejected retirement and is still throwing on the 2026 PDC and Premier League circuits. The reason he opens this list rather than closing it is simple. He admitted what was wrong. He is paying it back out of future winnings, and he has used his platform to talk about why pro darts is harder mentally and financially than the cameras make it look. That is the soft end of the cautionary tale. The other 9 on this list did not get out anywhere near that cleanly. Number 9. Leighton Bennett. Number 9 is the youngest cautionary tale on this entire list. What happened to Leighton Bennett did not just end a career, it killed one before it had even properly begun. Bennett was a teenage prodigy on the PDC development tour, and he had already played Luke Littler at junior level, which tells you exactly the company he was keeping. The next generation of British darts had his name in the conversation, and there was a genuine possibility he would one day walk out at Alexandra Palace with the world watching. That path slammed shut in 2024. Still only 17 or 18 years old at the time, Bennett was suspended pending a hearing for betting and match-related breaches, and the suspension runs until 2032. By the time he is allowed back anywhere near a professional darts board, the players who were his age when he started will be deep into the prime of their careers, and the development pipeline he was sitting at the top of will have moved on entirely without him. This is one of the most extreme examples in modern darts of a player ruining everything before he had earned his first proper paycheck. The talent was real, the route was already mapped, and in a sport where match-fixing penalties have only got harsher every single year, he made the one bet you simply cannot make. That brings us to number 8. Number 8. Prakash Jiwa. Number 8 made it further than Bennett ever did and threw it away in almost exactly the same fashion. Prakash Jiwa was a former PDC tour card holder who had qualified for the World Championship. He had been inside the system, wearing the shirt, walking the stage. For a working professional darts player outside the elite top 16, that is the dream, because you do not get rich on a tour card alone, but you have a real career. That career ended in 2024 when the Darts Regulation Authority handed Jiwa an 8-year ban for match fixing. For a player of his age and standing, 8 years is not a punishment you serve and bounce back from, it is the end. By the time the ban expires, the tour card is long gone, the contacts are gone, the practice routine is gone, and the small pool of sponsorship money that keeps a mid-tier pro afloat will have dried up forever. Whatever he made fixing a match, he traded for the entire rest of his career and every pound that would have come with it. The match-fixing wave that hit professional darts between 2022 and 2024 destroyed several players financially in this exact same way, and Jiwa is one of the cleanest examples in the whole crackdown. Number 7. Andy Jenkins. Climbing to number 7 is the most senior victim of that very same crackdown, and the example that shows how heavily the Darts Regulation Authority is now willing to come down on players who break the rules. Andy Jenkins, nicknamed the Hammer, reached the semi-finals of the 2008 PDC World Championship, and that alone is more than most pros will achieve across an entire career. He had a name, he had history, he had a settled place in the sport. In September of 2024, the DRA banned him for 11 years and fined him for match fixing and betting breaches, which is one of the longest bans ever issued in the entire history of professional darts. 56 years old at the time the ban came down, Jenkins will be 67 by the time it ends, and there is no professional return from that. There is no financial recovery from it either. A player at the back end of his career relies on exhibition bookings, small sponsorship deals, seniors tour appearances, and the occasional commentary or coaching gig, and every single one of those revenue streams depends on your name being clean. The moment you are publicly banned for 11 years for match fixing, all of them shut at once. Jenkins did not lose his money to drink or drugs or bad investments. He lost it the second the DRA published the statement. Number 6. Richie Burnett. Sitting at number 6 is one of the most painful comeback stories in modern darts, and one of the most painful collapse stories sitting just behind it. Richie Burnett, the Prince of Wales, took the 1995 BDO World Championship on his debut, beating Raymond van Barneveld 6-3 in the final at the age of 27. He had already lifted the Windmill World Masters in 1994, reached the 2001 PDC World Matchplay Final where he lost to Phil Taylor and won a PDC Pro Tour title in 2011. By any standard you want to apply, this was a real career. The collapse came in 2014 when he failed a PDC drug test for cocaine, drew an 18-month backdated ban, and vanished from the sport without a press conference. What happened to Burnett during those years is one of the bleakest stories darts has ever produced. By his own account, he hit rock bottom alone in a Wigan hotel room with no kettle. He was hungry, he had a pot noodle, and he had nothing to fill it with. So he drained rusty water out of the radiator, used that to make the noodles, and spent the rest of the night emptying the leak from the radiator into the sink. That is the world champion who beat Raymond van Barneveld in a major final. The comeback, when it came, was extraordinary. Burnett won his PDC tour card again in 2017 at around 50 years of age, beating Paul Nicholson in the final round of Q School. Then in January of 2022, at 54, he won it back a second time, playing on a damaged knee. By March of 2023, he had reached the UK Open quarter-finals, knocking out world number 2 Peter Wright on the way before losing to Dimitri van den Berg. He has spoken openly about depression and dartitis in interviews, and he is one of the very few players on this entire list still actively fighting his way back. His own words on the original cocaine ban put it simply, "I was offered half a sentence, but I'm no Gross. I took the lot." Number 5, Ted Hankey. Number 5 is the player who lost everything not to the sport, not to a substance, but to a single criminal act caught on CCTV. Ted Hankey, nicknamed the Count for his Dracula Cape walk-on, lifted the BDO World Championship twice. The first title came in 2000 when he hammered Ronnie Baxter 6-0 in the final, finished on a 170 checkout and set a then record 22 maximums across the tournament. The second arrived in 2009 when he beat Tony O'Shea 7-6. A stroke struck him before the 2012 Grand Slam of Darts, and he has lived with diabetes for years, so he had genuine health problems even before the rest of his life fell apart. Then came 2022. Hankey was charged with sexually assaulting a teenage woman in Crewe, an act that had been recorded on CCTV. He pleaded guilty at Warrington Crown Court, where the judge, Stephen Everett, called what he had done a disgraceful act. The sentence ran to 2 years in prison, plus 10 years on the sex offenders register. The financial wipeout was total. His wife filed for divorce, his children cut ties, every sponsor dropped him, and tournaments and events publicly disassociated themselves from his name. There is no return for a 2-time world champion convicted of that crime, which means the career income, the exhibition bookings, the Legends circuit money, and the seniors tour all closed on the day he pleaded guilty. Of every player on this list, Hankey is the one who destroyed himself most completely with a single decision. Number 4, Andy Fordham. Sitting at number 4 is one of the most loved players in the entire history of British darts, and one of the saddest stories the sport has ever produced. Andy Fordham, the Viking, lifted the 2004 BDO World Championship at Lakeside, beating Mervyn King 6-3 in the final. Alongside his wife Jenny, he ran a pub called The Rose in southeast London. At his peak, he weighed around 31 stone, which works out at roughly 434 pounds. His pre-match routine, which he confirmed in interviews himself, was reportedly 24 to 25 bottles of lager and half a bottle of brandy. That routine cost him everything. On the 21st of November 2004, only months after lifting the world title, Fordham collapsed during a televised match against Phil Taylor at the Circus Tavern, and the match was abandoned live on air. Doctors found his liver was operating at around 25%. By January of 2007, he had collapsed again, this time before he could even reach the Lakeside stage, and the hospital had to drain around 18 litres of fluid from his body before placing him on the emergency liver transplant list. He went on ITV's Celebrity Fit Club and lost roughly £266. He tried, genuinely, to come back. The financial damage had already landed though. The pub was gone, his career income was permanently capped, and the years of headline appearances and big paydays were over before he had even turned 50. On the 15th of July 2021, aged 59, Fordham died in hospital with his family present. His own words on the whole thing tell the story better than any narrator could. "I became darts champion even though I was never sober, and in a separate interview, winning was maybe the worst thing that happened to me." Andy Fordham did not file for bankruptcy. He did something worse. The drink took everything before the bank account ever got involved. Number 3, Jocky Wilson. Third on this list is the original rags to riches to rags story of professional darts, and arguably the most quoted cautionary tale the entire sport has ever produced. Jocky Wilson, born in Kirkcaldy, Scotland in 1950, was Scotland's first ever darts world champion. The 1982 BDO title came when he beat John Lowe 5-3 at Jolie's in Stoke for a winner's cheque of £6,500. He took the title again in 1989, defeating Eric Bristow 6-4 in front of around 8 million UK viewers, which made him the oldest world champion of his era at 38. The British Professional Championship landed in his hands 4 times, and at his peak, he was earning around £60,000 a year, which in the 1980s was serious money for a working-class darts player. The backstory was brutal. Orphanage upbringing, left school at 14, coal haulage and fish gutting jobs before darts. He only turned professional in 1979 because he won £500 at Butlins, and the dole stopped paying him as a result. The pre-match drinking ritual was lager and vodka, and Bristow himself joked that Wilson was working through a 40-ounce bottle by the end of his career. When a diabetes diagnosis arrived in the 1980s, alcohol turned dangerous, but switching to water collapsed his accuracy completely. In 1993, he joined the PDC breakaway alongside Bristow and Taylor and the rest. By the 23rd of December 1995, he had silently walked out of a venue and never played professionally again. Back in Kirkcaldy, Wilson lived on disability benefits in a council flat for the last 17 years of his life. He was severely overweight, diabetic, depressed, agoraphobic, and rarely left the flat at all. Death came on the 24th of March 2012, aged 62. That is the player who beat John Lowe and Eric Bristow on the biggest stage darts had ever offered, dying in a council flat on the Dole. The Bill Burroughs biography written about him is literally subtitled The Rags to Riches to Rags Story of Jocky Wilson. Number 2. Eric Bristow. Runner-up on our countdown is the man who built professional darts and could not stop himself from setting fire to the money it gave him. Eric Bristow, the crafty Cockney, born in Hackney in 1957, lifted the BDO World Championship 5 times across 1980, 1981, 1984, 1985 and 1986. 5 World Masters titles came with that, alongside 4 WDF World Cup singles wins, and he held the world #1 spot a record 5 separate times. He co-founded the 1993 PDC breakaway, which is the reason modern darts exists in the form it does today, and he mentored a young Phil Taylor by funding his early career out of his own pocket. Around £10,000 of Bristow's own money went into the man who would go on to win 16 world titles. The MBE followed, then it fell apart. At the 1986 Swedish Open, Bristow developed dartitis, a form of task-specific focal dystonia that stops you releasing the dart properly, and he never won another major title after January of that year. The peak earning years had ended, the lifestyle had not. In a 2011 profile, he said it himself, "I've earned millions, but spent millions." In another interview, he put it even more plainly, "There's not much point being the richest man in the graveyard." Sky Sports punditry was paying the bills for the next 2 decades until the 28th of November 2016, when Bristow posted a series of tweets about footballers who had survived sexual abuse, saying victims should have, in his words, sorted that poof out and calling them wimps. Sky sacked him within around 24 hours. Newcastle United dropped him. Booking partners dropped him. The income from broadcasting, which is what kept aging darts champions financially comfortable in retirement, evaporated overnight at his own hand. On the 5th of April 2018, Bristow died of a heart attack at the Echo Arena in Liverpool, where he had been working a corporate appearance at the Premier League, aged 60. The PDC renamed the Grand Slam of Darts trophy the Eric Bristow Trophy in his honour. He never filed for bankruptcy on paper, but by his own admission, he earned millions and spent millions, and in 2016, he personally torched the most reliable source of income he had left. Number 1. Mervyn King. And the player at number 1 is the story every active professional darts player needs to know, because it is the cleanest example in the entire history of the sport of someone going broke for a reason that was completely, totally, 100% avoidable. Mervyn King, born in Norfolk in 1966, has been a professional since the 1990s. The BDO World Masters came in 2004. He was BDO World Championship runner-up twice, in 2002 and again in 2004. After switching to the PDC in 2007, he was named PDC Newcomer of the Year, reached 7 PDC major finals, including the Premier League final and the Players' Championship finals, and played 16 consecutive PDC World Championships at Alexandra Palace. His career prize money has been reported as over £2 million. £2 million in earnings, and on the 5th of March 2024, Mervyn King was officially declared bankrupt at the High Court of Justice in London, owing Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs over £500,000. The reason, in his own words, is the most painful part of this whole story. He did not realise that PDC prize money counted as taxable earnings. He thought of it as winnings, the way you think about a lottery ticket. UK income tax on his prize money went unpaid for around 2 decades, and by the time HMRC caught up with him, the bill had ballooned past £500,000 and there was nothing left in the accounts to pay it with. During the COVID lockdown of 2020, he was already working as an Amazon delivery driver. doing around 200 parcels a day for around £12 a shift. He lost his PDC tour card, dropped down to the Challenge Tour and the World Seniors, and once the bankruptcy was declared, he was barred from being a director of the small construction business he had started with a friend. Losing the house was a real fear, and so was losing his 3 large dogs, a Pyrenean mountain dog, a Newfoundland cross, and a golden retriever. His own words to The Sun in 2024 capture it better than anyone else can. "I hid my head in the sand." The trouble is that you think the gravy train will last forever, and it doesn't. I was quite naive when it came to tax. I actually thought with it being winnings, I didn't have to pay tax on it. And to every younger player coming up the ranks behind him, don't do what I did. Don't hide your head in the sand. That is why Mervyn King sits at number 1. Every other player on this list lost their money to something dramatic. Drugs, drink, crime, match fixing, the breakdown of the body, the breakdown of the mind. Mervyn King lost over £500,000 because he did not open his post. Before we wrap this up, there is one piece of context that has to sit alongside every story you have just heard, because the players themselves have been telling us for years that pro darts is harder financially than it looks from the sofa. Take Adrian Lewis, 2-time world champion. In an interview captured on the MDA Events YouTube channel, when asked how he would spend his winnings the moment he became world champion, his answer was not a sports car, not a house, not a holiday. His answer was, "I can pay my tax bill." That sentence, from a player at the very top of the sport, lands harder when you put it next to the Mervyn King story. Scott Waits, a former BDO world champion, summed up what it felt like to watch the BDO prize money collapse around him in a Tungsten Tailways interview, calling it, in his own words, a bit of a kick in the nuts. When the prize fund of an entire organisation contracts overnight, every player in that organisation loses the money they were planning around for the rest of their careers. Stephen Bunting, a former Lakeside winner, now in the PDC's top 16, has spoken on the Club 501 podcast with Wayne Mardle about the years he genuinely thought about quitting darts. The episode is called, plainly, "I Thought About Quitting Darts." Luke Humphreys, the current world number 1, has talked at length on the official PDC channel about anxiety attacks while playing. Jim Williams, the Welsh PDC pro, has gone on online darts to talk about the financial calculation of whether it is even worth taking a tour card if you do not have a financial cushion behind you. Pascal Ruprecht, a German Q-School qualifier, has been clear in interviews that he wants to finish his police training before he commits to darts full-time because he understands what happens to a player who walks away from the day job too early. Even the broadcasters know it. Wayne Mardle, the Sky Sports lead pundit and a 4-time World Championship semi-finalist, sat down with Dan Dawson on the official PDC podcast for an episode the channel titled, in his own words, "Hawaiian Shirts, Beating Phil Taylor and Darting Heartbreak." Bobby George, one of the most beloved figures the sport has ever produced, has spent the last few years recording interviews specifically aimed at telling young darts players how to look after their money, including a piece on the MDA Events channel that is just called Financial Advice for Young Players. Raymond van Barneveld, a 5-time world champion, walked away from the sport in 2020 with a phrase that the darts press has been replaying ever since, that he would hate himself every single day for not being able to compete with the new generation. The pattern is hard to miss. The players know, the pundits know, the retired champions know. The tour card system, the entry fees, the travel costs, the tax position on prize money, and the brutal drop in income the moment your form slips, all of it adds up to a sport where a single bad year can take a working pro out of the game permanently, which is exactly how every name on this list ended up here. 10 players, and more or less the same ending arrived in 10 separate ways. 2 BDO era world champions died in poverty. 1 built the modern sport and burned his own platform. 1 pleaded guilty to a crime that ended everything. 1 survived cocaine and homelessness and is still playing today. 2 were banned for match fixing in the same year. 1 teenager was suspended before his career properly started. The man at the top of the list lost everything because he did not understand that prize money is taxed, and the man who opened this list is paying back a 6-figure tax bill out of his future winnings while still walking on stage in front of the cameras. The names change, the errors change, the substances and the scandals change, but the ending lands in the same place almost every single time. If you are watching this and you play, take what these players said and do the exact opposite. If you are watching this as a fan, the next time you see a young pro lifting a major trophy at Alexandra Palace, remember that the trophy is not the ending. What they do over the next 10 years with the money, the contracts, the temptations, and the tax bill is the actual ending. Some of them will be fine. Some of them will end up on a list exactly like this one. That was 10 dumb darts players who went broke. Thanks for watching.